always so professional when we see that coming in. Always, always makes me want to say thanks to our boy Mad Mardigan, Mad Cheesemo, Mad Barber Entertainment, all the different names he goes by. If he were here, he could hang out with Slender Dad, a YouTuber's YouTuber. So,
That's true. That's true. What's Gucci, my ninjas?
oh, hopefully people are watching the content he puts out that we're a part of, especially the movies with Mad, where you can all get those inside jokes that we're making. So tonight we're going to do something a little different for our show, and that's kind of do a deep dive on one specific topic that's been in the news for a little bit, but that is very near and dear to our hearts as gamers. And I'm not talking about video games specifically. I'm talking like old school on top of a tabletop games. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed our fun little thumbnail that told you what we'd be talking about. Slender, what is the topic we're going to be covering on a deep dive tonight?
Well, I was originally going to say, this is not the first time that Wizards of the Coast has had themselves some conspiracies, scandals, backlash from the community, etc., etc. But they just dropped OGL 1.2 as well, so I figured we'd probably start with OGL 1.2. It's better, but there are still some huge red flags that I think probably need to be discussed. And then after that, maybe we talk about the some of the controversies that Wizards of the Coast has had over the last few years or so.
So yeah, that sounds great. So I think what I'm going to start with, just to kind of give people a feel for where this is I'm going to share. This is Hasbro Pulse. This is Hasbro is the parent company of Wizards of the Coast, who are the owners of Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. And this is an example of the material content, monetization product line, whatever you want to call it, that Hasbro currently has available related to Dungeons and Dragons. Right up top, our top line is this new upcoming movie. They're really pumped about, I guess, that one starring Chris Pine. So they've made some action figures that involve that movie. So this one is Chris Pine. I think this one is Michelle Rodriguez is in it, and the guy from Pokemon Detective Pokemon. I don't even know his name. These are some other toys they make that are actually, I think these ones are pretty cool. They roll into dice, and then they unroll into Dungeons and Dragons characters, which is pretty cool. We have some classic 1980s. Do you remember that Dungeons and Dragons cartoons from the 80s?
I do remember it.
Yeah, so they're finally in 2023 releasing toys for it. So good for them for being on time. And then we finally get to actual like D&D, products. They've got t-shirt merchandise. Let's see. Do they, what's funny is I don't see the actual games though, which is funny. You'd think that'd be available on Hasbro, but it's not. So
Well, I will say I actually watched the trailer for that new movie the other day, and doesn't look great.
it reminds me. Do you remember the Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out around 2000 with Marlon Wayans?
Yes, I do, and I've noticed a thing. They really want to
It's
have the thieves in like front and center, and I'm like, maybe choose a different class. This doesn't seem to be
I'm
working out for you.
I'm gonna make a bet. There is a non-zero chance that the movie 20 plus years ago is gonna end up being better than this one with Chris Pine.
There's another one that was kind of a B movie in between that was. I mean, I wouldn't say it was great, but it was It was probably better than these other two.
Yeah, so what we're trying to get at is Hasbro as the parent company is definitely pushing monetization. I mean, that's a buzzword that we've heard a lot in the last week, especially if you've been paying attention to debates involving Steven Crowder and Daily Wire. and a lot of other things in general beyond just YouTube demonetization or monetization. But monetization is a concept that is in all types of business. In this case, Hasbro is really trying to push Wizards of the Coast to monetize the gamer base that they have. That's the Magic the Gathering gamer base, that's the Dungeons and Dragon gamers base. And with that in mind, the person they brought in to run Wizards of the Coast is actually a former Microsoft employee, was involved with Xbox and microtransactions, and everybody loves those, right? You know, the pay to win systems.
Oh
So,
man, microtransactions, they're my favorite. They're so great. I mean, when I play a game and I'm really enjoying it, like I really loved The Witcher 3, right? Like really loved that game. And every time I played it, I was like, this is great. But it'd be perfect if I could just have some microtransactions for some more cosmetics and stuff, and maybe get a loot box every time I finished a mission instead of actually just getting paid.
you're gonna have to do it. Reminds me of I really enjoyed playing Destiny for a while, but I got so fed up with the just the transactions that push you, like they pushed you to the shop to try to get the skins and the oh, it was so frustrating. Now on the plus side, they didn't ever make it pay to win. It was always just the stuff that you would really enjoy having, like the coolest, emotes, the coolest, skins and all that. But it wasn't stuff that you actually needed to win. Where that's kind of a different direction than what they're doing with Magic the Gathering. So, so for people who haven't played Magic, and I know you played Magic, right? So maybe you can kind of explain what how decks work in Magic and how often they used to be refreshed versus what's going on now.
Um, well, and that's the thing. I mean, Magic has been around for what, 30 years now? Yeah, 30 years. I think their 30-year anniversary wasn't too long ago. And it's the biggest and baddest of the card games. I know a lot of people play Pokemon and a lot of people play Yu-Gi-Oh and everything else, but those are all actually Magic the Gathering ripoffs as far as I'm concerned. And
Pretty sure, doesn't Pokemon predate Magic, or is it? I
not
don't
the
know.
card game.
Okay.
But yeah, but the thing with Magic the Gathering is, I think back in the day you'd get like one set a year. And that would include like a set and then maybe an expansion or two, for maybe a total of 3 throughout the year. Now you're basically just getting like new stuff every single quarter all the time. Lots of additional sets. It's just, they're overprinting everything right now. It's actually killing their market. And I think you were the one that told me, isn't Wizards of the Coast responsible for like 72% of Hasbro's profit margins or
Yes.
something like that?
So yeah, Wizards of the Coast, which is the and their sub, the stuff they're responsible for would be Dungeons, Dragons, Magic the Gathering. The profit they generate in that division accounts for 72% of the overall net profit, dollar wise, of Hasbro as a whole.
Right.
So that's like Hasbro, and you're like, oh, well, maybe no, but remember, Hasbro makes Marvel toys, they make Transformers, they make G.I. Joe. Hasbro's got the Star Wars license as well, because they got that when they bought Kenner. And out of all
Listen
the
here, Wizards. You need to get out there and make more money for Daddy.
yeah, the pimp hand is strong with Hasbro. They have decided Wizards of the Coast needs to just generate more and more profit, and it makes sense. And here's why: from like somebody who's worked in a business setting, the materials cost and the lead time to make Dungeons and Dragons content or Magic the Gathering cards is so much less than it would to take Transformers toys that require development, engineering, molds, product runs, painting, packaging, delivering, all those other steps. With Magic, especially, it's printing cards. So you just have to get the cards printed and you put them in small boxes and ship. Or you put them in those little, I think they also sell them in the little card packs, right? Where you buy and you only get like 5 to 10 cards in a pack.
Yeah, they're boosters. You get 15 cards in a pack.
Yeah.
Usually one rare, 3 uncommons, the rest common.
So, and what do they charge? I should look up. Let's do an experiment. Let's see. Is it probably on Target, right? I think Target sells Magic cards. I wonder what the cards cost now. Magic the Gathering cards. Sweet. All right. Let me share this out so that people can see the how they are gouging with this. When you bought cards when you were younger, how much did they cost? Do you remember? Like roughly?
I think it was like 350 for a booster.
All right. So a draft pack, which I don't even know what that is $19.
A draft pack? Draft is a format.
Um, here's a visual history. Magic the Commander deck is $50 to get a whole deck. A bundle you can get for 36. I don't even know what's in this bundle. Oh, here's a collector booster. Is $28. I feel like that's a little bit of a markup compared to what you used to pay. Oh, here you go. Magic the Gathering Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate Collector Booster Pack, $37. Magic the Gathering Dominaria United Collector Booster, $29.
Is that just a single booster pack or a box of boosters? Although boxes of boosters usually cost a hell of a lot more than that.
It is, look, here you go, 15 cards, packed full of rares and foils.
Just rares and foils? That might not be bad.
Now, here's the question, though. If you're now able to buy packs that are just rares and foils, wouldn't that make them less rare?
Well, yeah, there's a whole thing with the overprinting. The value of the cards is also just across the boards declining, which sucks for people who actually invest in those things because they used to be worth a lot of money.
I'm
yeah, I
looking
don't
for
know
the
what
cheapest
this
thing I
draft
can
pack
get.
is. Draft packs, apparently they're making boosters specific for drafts now, which I don't like that at all. That sounds shitty.
All right, so here you get 3 Dominaria Remastered Magic the Gathering Draft Booster, including 1 traditional foil card and 33% of the packs. So you get 15 Magic the Gathering cards per booster. 1 card of rare or higher in every pack. So it's 3 packs of 15 cards, and they're charging you $21.99 for that.
That's not terrible. I mean, I haven't played in a while, and the last time I played, they were usually about $6-7 a pack, so that seems pretty in line.
But it seems like there's a lot of. Did they usually have this many systems going at once?
Usually, what would happen is the last time I was playing, there'd be a main set that was released, and then 2 expansions that followed it. Those three blocks would be legal. The previous block would also be tournament legal, and then the most recent edition, like they had like a just like first edition, second edition, third edition, which is basically reprints from various different sets. So basically, at any given time, 7 different sets should be tournament legal. And generally, if you get a set when it first drops, it should be tournament legal for the next 2 years minimum. I don't know what the case is now, but from what I hear, it's moving fast.
All right, let me see. I'm going to try sorting to see what the. Let's do. Where can I sort here? Filter, sort by price low to high. Let's see what the lowest price Magic product is that we could get. Drum roll is a $9.99 lanyard, or a mug, or a dish towel.
That's pretty lame.
The lowest cost cards you could get at Target seem to be $17.99. Oh no, wait, that's a coin. Never mind. So you can't get. I'm still moving to try to find where you can get cards. So we got to go to page 2. Let's see. Oh, here we go. $18.99 for a draft pack, which is basically 3 booster packs.
I guess. I don't know why they're being specifically marked out as draft packs. Draft tournaments were kind of my favorite thing back in the day.
Here you go. It looks like you get 20 cards per booster, per draft booster.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just know draft tournaments were my favorite thing because they were a level playing field and they tested your deck building capabilities on the spot instead of your ability to go figure out what the best decks were in the meta and just buy the cards to make those. But basically, you would take 3 boosters. You would sit at a table with the other players. You crack open the first booster. You pick 1 card from that booster and you hand the other cards to your left. Then you take the cards from the person who's sitting to your right and they, then you pick a card from that until you've gone through all 15, and you do it with the next 2 boosters. You take those theoretically 45 cards that you've picked, right? And you make a 40-card deck that you compete in the tournament with. Those were a lot of fun because, like I said, it tested your deck building skills out a little more, which was pretty interesting to me. But I don't know why they're marking them as draft packs specifically.
All right, so we got a reference in 2012. One of our viewers has informed us that they were $6 to $10 a pack. So Blue Kitty, thank you for letting us know that, because we're a little further behind on what they were costing. So at $6 to $10 a pack, that looks like the prices are slightly inflated, but not dramatically higher than what it would be if it was $10 a pack and you get 3 packs in these things.
Yeah, I don't think they're going crazy on the price. I just think they're overprinting. I think the same problem has happened with Dungeons and Dragons. Like, if you've looked at the chronology from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 to 4.0 to 5.0, right? Every single edition of Dungeons and Dragons has been a little shorter. Like, every single run. The first one, I think, ran for 11 years, and the next one ran for like 10, and then 8, and then 7. Like, the chronology is very odd that way.
So does this tell you which set of rules this is? Let's see. It says Dungeons and Dragons Core Rule Books Gift Set, $93. Let's see if it tells us. It is the 5th edition. You get the Player's Handbook, Dungeons Master Guide, and Monster Manual are the foundational texts of D&D's 5th edition for beginners and veterans alike.
Yeah. $90, you said?
Yeah, $93.99.
That's not bad. The books generally cost $30 a pop. And this comes with a cheap Dungeon Master screen and a little thing to put the books in. So sure, $93. That's not bad.
Now, how often are the, so this was released in 2018, it looks like.
Yeah.
Do you know, are they working on a 6th edition already?
They're working on 1D&D.
What is, explain that?
1D&D is their attempt at breaking into the virtual tabletop market. They're going to try and do D&D online, basically.
Aren't people already doing that?
Yeah, there's plenty of virtual tabletops that you could actually play D&D on. They're actually going after them in the OGLs as well.
So, explain. All right. So I think we've hit the point where we should get into that. Explain the OGL to people.
All right. Well, I think we discussed this a little last week, but the OGL is the open game license. And for the longest time, the OGL 1.0 has existed, I think, for like 20 years now, 20 years plus. And basically, it made the Magic, or not the Magic the Gathering, but the Dungeons and Dragons lore was available to all to create their own content using it. They were able to monetize that content, do all sorts of cool things. It's why you've got all these books that have been published, kind of expanding the lore of, say, the Forgotten Realms, Eberron, Dragonlance, all those things. You've got all that content being developed. You've got lots of campaigns being developed outside of just what D&D is putting together. You've got supplements, different books that different companies are making. All of this kind of just feeding in and growing the community, building content, making a lot more cool stuff available for the customers, i.e. the players. And a couple weeks ago, D&D dropped OGL 1.1, which sucked. It sucked real hard. There were some serious red flags in that. Basically, they could take your content and do whatever they wanted with it, and there was nothing you could do to stop them if you used OGL 1.1. OGL 1.0 no longer existed. If you made money off their content, there's a good possibility that they were going to be taking their share. And all of it was subject to change on a whim. Yeah. And here you go.
Yeah, so I just brought up a new article that dropped, I think, yesterday, into explaining how they have now like it took what the original OGL was around for 20, 30 years. So, and in the span of about a week and a half, they've gone from 1.1 to 1.2 because they got so much hate, so much. So,
yeah, OGL
yes.
version 1.0 alpha was originally published by Wizards of the Coast in 2000 to license the use of portions of the third edition of Dungeons and Dragons via a system reference document, thus allowing third-party publishers to produce compatible material.
Yeah, so here you go. Wizard of the Coast, Hasbro, and publisher released the new draft ahead of its self-imposed deadline. And unlike the previously leaked draft, OGL 1.2 will be subject to community feedback known as play testing in the tabletop community.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here we go. Wizards of the Coast now explicitly says that older content will be unaffected by the new OGL 1.2. Nothing will impact any content you have already published under OGL 1.0A. That will always be licensed under OGL 1.0A. Your stuff is your stuff. That's a funny way to say your stuff is your stuff, since in the next OGL your stuff won't be your stuff, but we'll get into that. So within the announcement, Brink said that the original OGL is being deauthorized to allow Wizards of the Coast to enact the protective options against publishing harmful, discriminatory, or illegal content covered in OGL 1.2. We want here's 2022 BS. We want an inclusive, safe play experience for everyone, Brink said. This is deeply important to us, and OGL 1.0A didn't give us any ability to ensure that. I'm going to call shenanigans, like royal shenanigans, that somehow the OGL was why they didn't have an inclusive play community. No, you had an OGL and you decided that you needed to monetize. So I've read a lot of articles from CNBC and other business places about it. And the people up charge of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast higher up, they kept using the word monetize. We're under monetizing our player base. We need to get more monetization from our players. So they can kiss my ass coming out now trying to pretend this OGL had anything to do with protecting people and not making money.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like, once you get to the executive level at Wizards, they don't give two shits about the players. We are just walking wallets for them to pluck cash out of.
I just, when you've already had the president of the company give statements in interviews talking about how it's because they're under monetizing the community, you don't try to, like, what's the don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. So
Yeah, yeah.
here's the summary. We will continue to support VTT usage for both OGL creators and VTT operators. That would be virtual tabletop policy. Ownership disputes. You own your own content. You don't give Wizards any license back, and for any ownership disputes, you can sue for breach of contract and money damages. No hateful content or conduct. If you include harmful, discriminatory, or illegal content or engage in that content publicly, we can terminate your license. And you'll have the option to include a badge on your OGL work. Once you've got our feedback on the badge, we'll create a guide on how to use it. How are they actually going to? I mean, what is the thought around it? The Dungeons and Dragons isn't the only tabletop system around at all.
No, there's plenty of others.
People who are, I'm guessing they're talking about people like Critical Role who are playing D&D on YouTube or, doing videos of it, and they're somehow wanting to cash in on that. Is that, I think we both think that's maybe
Wait,
what
are we
this is
talking
about.
OGL or VTTs right now?
Well, I'm just saying that, like, the mindset of why they're doing this is because they're seeing people out there making money doing these things, and they see people making content. They see virtual tabletops. I feel like that what they're trying to do is saying, "Hey, I see people making money on playing Dungeons and Dragons. They should be giving us some money back."
I think that was part of it originally. I think the bigger part is they're trying to consolidate power. They're trying to push as many people out of the market as they can and ensure that no one new comes up in the market. Like, as far as I can tell, like, that's the main goal here. Because yeah, you can make some quick cash by extorting all the people who have been sending customers your way, which just baffles me to no end. That these people are going to send you all this business and you're going to charge them for the privilege, but the real goal here, I think, is just to consolidate control. Like, they would very much like it if they were the only game in town. And as I said before, if you look at the chronology from like first edition all the way through to fifth edition, what we've seen ever since Wizards of the Coast acquired the Dungeons and Dragons property is that the time between new editions has gotten shorter and shorter. The cost of new editions has gone up, and the amount, the quality and quantity of content and supplementary content that becomes available for each of those editions is less and less. Between me and several of my friends, we have every 3-5 book pretty much that has ever been made. It fills almost an entire bookshelf, like a big bookshelf, probably two bookshelves. Fourth edition, maybe like 2 sections of the bookshelf. And fifth edition, which they're already talking about 1 D&D, but fifth edition doesn't even fill a whole section of a bookshelf, not even one. There's like maybe 15, 20 books, probably.
It seems like, and what is it? All right, so in your opinion, having done a lot of tabletop playing, is there anything that makes D&D specifically a better experience than like Pathfinder or some of these other ones that are available?
No. If it's what you started with, it's got good lore. And even that is highly dependent. Like, I am a big fan of the Forgotten Realms lore. My buddy is a big fan of the Eberron lore. Like, everybody has their flavor, right? As far as Pathfinder, I'd say Pathfinder has a similar feel to Forgotten Realms, but a little more into the the Feywild and cool stuff like that. I think Pathfinder's got some pretty good lore, actually. I enjoy Pathfinder. But it really just comes down to preference.
That's what I'm trying to get, because what I'm thinking is going to happen is that instead of consolidating and making more money, you're actually giving people a really good reason to move away from your system completely. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, as soon as OGL 1.1 got announced and word started getting out, they lost thousands of people on the website. Like subscriptions were being canceled left and right. So but
now,
yeah.
yeah, so it's that's the thing. Like, it's such a like, and we've seen this happen so many times with lots of, where people come in and try to monetize and they end up destroying their brand and then their product.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get, all right. So apparently they're going to move their game mechanics to Creative Commons license. Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization dedicated to overcoming legal obstacles to sharing knowledge and creativity. So I guess, I mean, there's that. They're going to let the game
Here
mechanics decisions go to somebody else.
here's the thing. At first glance, that sounds really cool. Like, oh, that's a great thing. Except for one problem. You can't copyright game mechanics. This has already been fought in our legal system, and you cannot copyright game mechanics. You can copyright the expression of those mechanics. So, like, you can't do the exact same thing that they do. An example, like the health and mana bars from like Diablo, right? You know, the orb with the red
Mm-hmm.
liquid in it that gets lower and lower. If I were, it's health. That's what that red liquid is. It is your character's health. If I were to use health in my game, they can't tell me I'm using their mechanic. But if I were to use health and it has a glass orb with a little dragon holding it that's the same metal that the dragon in Diablo was, and then there's red liquid flowing in it, I am copying the expression of that mechanic. And then we could have an issue. So this whole, oh, we're going to give our mechanics to the community. Yeah, that's because you had no control over those mechanics in the first place.
Yeah, like with the idea, if you want to use quintessentially D&D content such as owl bears and magic missile, OGL 1.2 will provide you a perpetual irrevocable license to do so. Is magic missile a specifically copyrighted, patented D&D thing? I feel like that's just,
I mean, it is, I guess, but I could always just call it, like arcane darts. You know? Congratulations, I'm not using magic missile.
I've watched a lot of anime and they come up with lots of names for magic spells.
Yeah.
It's not something that you know you can. I mean, let's brainstorm some alternatives for magic missile. You can do just like lightning. Lightning. You can't patent lightning. Just say lightning. You can fireball. Like, how many animes do they just use fireball magic and they just say fireball?
But that's kind of the point, right? Like, you could call it whatever you want to call it. I won't call it magic missile, but it will essentially function in a similar fashion and be almost exactly the same thing.
So yeah, when you do your
You're
game
you're
mechanic,
telling me you've got the market cornered on using magic to fire a little ball of force, or maybe several little balls of force that move unerringly toward their target and cannot miss? No, shut up.
I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be able to patent range magic attack mechanic. Like
Yeah,
it's like, come on.
that's
It's
kind of the point.
and so it's so terrible.
Well, and like you said, that's how they start off with the OGL 1.2. At first it sounded really good, but the more I thought about it and then I did some research, yeah, that's a nothing burger. Like, they're literally granting to the community through a Creative Commons license that which the community could use whether they liked it or not anyway. But if you look into some of the finer points of the OGL 1.2, and I could share my screen if you would like at this point.
Yeah, let's switch. Let's go actual. Let's go right to the OGO. Let's see this thing.
Yeah, we're gonna dive in here. Let's go with share screen. Share screen. It's gonna be that one. Yeah. If you
Increase
see
your
here,
font size. Increase the font size. Hit the little plus
enhance,
button. Hit the plus button.
enhance.
Yep. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. And one more. There you go. Now that's readable content.
All right. As you can see, this time they have clearly marked it as a draft. After the whole, trying to say the first one was a draft when we all know it wasn't. Creator product badges. I guess if you do develop content under OGL 1.2, you're supposed to put one of these on there in accordance with their product badge style guide, which, okay, that's pretty normal stuff. Licensed content. They just talk about what's content, what's licensed, who's who, works covered. None of this is all that. It's a lot of legalese. I don't understand quite a bit of it, but there are some very specific things that I don't like in here that I think should throw up red flags with anyone who is working on or, planning to work on content here.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, tell us. Let's get some.
This one's a big one right here under warranties and disclaimers. No hateful content or conduct. You will not include content in your licensed works that is harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, or harassing, or engage in conduct that is harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, or harassing. It's kind of a problem for me to begin with because, what if I have bad guys doing things that are harassing or harmful and that's the thing, right? Like, but then the very next sentence is the real big problem. We have the sole right to decide what conduct or content is harmful or is hateful. And you covenant that you will not contest any such determination via any suit or other legal action.
Well, that's pretty
Yeah.
Pretty specific right there.
So if I have, a group of drow slavers come up from the Underdark and kidnap a whole bunch of people from a local village, let me guess, that's harmful, that's discriminatory, that's obscene, that's you guys aren't going to let that happen, despite the fact that, like, that is a thing that drow raiding parties did all the time, according to, the lore of Forgotten Realms.
It's but you've got people who are bad. You've got bad guys. You've got villains. They're gonna do bad things.
You kind of have to have those elements in a story because there has to be conflict.
So we both just kind of rewatched or caught up on, and we discussed it last episode. SAO, Sword Art Online, and in the end of season 1, core 2, what some people call season 2, whatever. When the Alfheim storyline, there is a creepy dude who is playing Oberon / the head of research and development for a computer company.
Oh yeah, there's some rough scenes with that guy.
And he does some really inappropriate things. Very inappropriate, like Harvey Weinstein inappropriate.
I mean, it's cool. He has to pay his dues afterwards.
Oh no, but that's part of you as a viewer understanding how much of a villain he is him doing those things.
Yeah.
Right? Like if he was just talking like I have plans to monetize the player base of Alfheim. You're like, yeah, okay, well that's pretty vague. I don't know, I guess what that means exactly. No, when he goes over to Asuna and he starts groping and doing bad things, you're like, oh, this guy is evil and I want him to die. Kirito, go waste him. So that's villains are villains, right? So when like no hateful content, or like what does that mean? Is D&D going to tell you that only these 3 player classes of types are allowed to be bad?
Well, here's the other problem, right? This is section 6, subsection F, right? If we now go to section 7 and talk about termination, we may immediately terminate your license if you infringe any of our intellectual property, bring an action challenging our ownership of our licensed content, trademarks, or patents, violate any law in relation to your activities under this license, or violate section 6, subsection F. You know, that thing that we have the sole right to decide on. So
Exactly.
they
Like
could
hateful
just not
content.
like you and be like, we have decided that your content is problematic according to section 6, subsection F. And according to section 7, subsection B, subsection 1, we can now terminate your freaking your license. You don't get to distribute that shit anymore. Like, wow. Those are two huge red flags to me. The other big red flag that I saw with this one was we have no liability to you for any types of damage in connection with the use of our licensed content, including without limitation, any indirect, consequential, special, punitive, or exemplary damages, so long as our conduct at issue was not grossly negligent or intentional. So they can do things intentionally and then be like, guys, it was a draft.
Oh yeah, well, of course.
There was another one I didn't like in here that was pretty bad, in my opinion, if I can find it. Let me see if I can find the word. I'm on the wrong place. The word injunction. Yeah, here we go. So this is section 3, subsection A. Any such claim. Well, let's get up here first. What you own. Your license works are yours. They may not be copied or used without your permission. You acknowledge that we and our licenses, as content creators ourselves, might independently come up with content similar to something you create. If you have a claim that we breached this provision or that one of our licenses did in connection with content they licensed from us, any such claim will be brought only as a lawsuit for breach of contract and only for money damages. You expressly agree that money damages are an adequate remedy for such a breach and that you will not seek or be entitled to injunctive relief. Now,
Meaning that if they catch if you catch them using your shit that you made, they will just have to at worst write you a check and you can't stop them from using your stuff. So an injunction is a
is where
legal.
you sue to stop something from being done.
Well, you sue for a lot of for damages, but an injunction is where because you are being a damaged party and the damages are ongoing, the judge will actually order something stopped.
Yes.
So under an injunction, like the judge could actually make Hasbro, in this case, physically stop printing Dungeons and Dragons things. Like if they ended up using something that you made and put it in one of their Dungeon Master books, they could actually physically, if they order the injunction, they could keep them from printing books and actually make Hasbro have to, at their expense, get the other ones that have already been put in print sent back and like pulled off the shelf.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. Like, and that's so basically, and that's what that threat of an injunction, an injunctive relief, is a big motivator for a company to actually make things right when they screw a creator. Like it's, in addition to money, you're going to have to go through a lot of trouble. So it's a BS move, and doing that is another pro Hasbro FU creator move.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just weird that they're making sure to put that in there too. Like, you acknowledges blah blah blah. If you have a claim that we breached this provision, like, why are you so expressly saying that? Well, if you have a claim like that, you can try to make us pay you, but you can't stop us. And you agree under the terms of this license that you will not even attempt to seek injunctive relief. No, that is a huge red flag to me. That's like, okay, well, then I create some content under this OGL, and, I create this really cool character, and he's kind of like you know, a swashbuckling kind of like rogue fighter style dude, and he's a bit of a ladies' man, and he's, all the girls love him, and he's got a thing going on with the princess or whatever. And then they decide to take my character, or something that looks very similar to my character, make their own content. Suddenly my character gets killed. He ends up down in the 9 hells, and he's, taking it up the tailpipe from a bunch of demons or something. It's like, well, that wasn't my plan for my character. Why did you do that with my character? Oh, here's 50,000. Shut the hell up. Like, oh boy. Oh boy.
Ugh. Let's see. All right, what number 5? So you control your content. I'm looking at number 5 here. You can make your content available under any terms you choose, but you may not change the terms under which we make our licensed content available.
Yeah. Which is fine, but the problem with their licensed content is it seems like this particular write-up is saying, yes, you have your licensed content, but since you published it under our license agreement, you are giving up a lot of your protections, according to this particular contract. Like, you can't seek injunctive relief. And like this says, and only for money damages? Okay. How much money damages? Like, there's a lot of shisty stuff going on in this.
Not to mention, what we also, I don't know what state Wizards of the Coast is incorporated in, right? So sometimes, depending on the state, monetary damages can be capped. So this came up with the Johnny Depp trial here in Virginia. There was a cap, even though the jury awarded damages of, I forget, whatever $1 million it was. It had to be knocked down to like $350,000 because that was the maximum allowed in Virginia as a penalty for one of the elements. Like, she lost on others, but so for all I know, depending on the Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast could have incorporated this organization's rules in a state where the cap on damages might only be like, I know in Texas there's it's another state where there's only like a $300,000 maximum for certain types of lawsuit damages.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's for actual damages as opposed to punitive, meaning where you prove someone, damaged your ability to earn money, the actual damages, which this is what that would be in this case, right? It's the damages for money earning. So what you're telling me is that Wizards of the Coast may only have a maximum payout of making all this money on somebody's shit of a couple $100,000, and they're done at most.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to use that against you. Like, say they rob you of something that becomes, it gets used on Stranger Things or whatever, and it's like huge. They start selling toys of it. They put it in the Magic the Gathering cards.
Yeah.
And these cards are going, sometimes those cards can go for hundreds of dollars a piece, right? So you turn around and you say, hey, Wizards of the Coast, you guys, you kind of screwed me out of all this money. They might have made $1 million on it, and Wizards of the Coast going to be like, here's your check for a couple $100,000. Now shut your mouth and go away, because we get to keep using it, by the way.
Yeah.
Because there's no injunction against it.
There's no injunctive relief.
Yeah. So you get the maximum payout, and we get to use it in perpetuity.
Yeah. And this is the VTT. I've heard some pretty interesting things about the VTT as well. Not great, but we can read through this one a little more closely, because I have not read this part yet. I've read all this, and I think we hit the important highlights. Like I said, the major red flags. But the VTT, why does Wizards need a VTT policy? We support the role of VTT's play in the tabletop space. The ability to game remotely means more people can game, and it's wonderful that people thousands of miles apart can share space as those sitting around a table. But as VTTs advance, their functionality will raise tricky questions. Where's the line between a VTT and a video game? Are you fucking kidding me right now? When does a VTT become more than just a replacement for the traditional tabletop? Those questions require thoughtful answers. Answering them will take time. and we want this policy to reflect your input. So we'll be asking for feedback and talking to you about our goals as the discussion advances and new technology emerges. Okay, I can tell you right now, whoever wrote this, not a gamer. If you've played tabletops and you've played video games and you have at any time in your life, even once, sat down and used a VTT, you know the difference. You really do.
Yeah, I'm gonna be pretty sure that virtual tabletop is definitely more for simulating a tabletop experience. It doesn't have cutscenes. I guess is that what I mean? Is that what they're implying that as it's going to evolve to have like full on animation and actual like simulated battles as opposed to just rolling the dice, virtually?
Yeah, I think that is. Here we go. I actually see the part that I think somebody else was discussing in one of the videos I was watching for research. But using VTTs to replicate the experience of sitting around the table playing D&D with your friends is what's permitted under this policy, by the way. So displaying static SRD content is just fine because it's just like looking in a source book. You can put the text of Magic Missile up in your VTT and use it to calculate and apply damage to your target, and automating Magic Missile's damage to replace manually rolling and calculating is also fine. The VTT can apply Magic Missile's 1d4 plus 1 damage automatically to your target's hit points. You do not have to manually calculate and track that damage. What isn't permitted are features that don't replicate your dining room table storytelling. If you replace your imagination with an animation of the Magic Missile streaking across the board to strike your target, or your VTT integrates our content into an NFT, that's not the tabletop experience. That's
Okay,
more like a video game.
I'm going to call my bullshit flag here on two things. Number one, who the fuck is making an NFT using your virtual tabletop? Kiss my ass. Like that's not how
Hasbro
that.
is. Hasbro's been making NFTs.
No, what I'm saying is like people who make virtual tabletops aren't making NFTs. That's like silly. The reason that's in there is because Hasbro is making NFTs or whatever. But what I'm getting at is like the whole if you replace your imagination with animation. Look, D&D players have been enhancing their game setup since the beginning. I mean, miniatures. You could argue that miniatures are not imagination, right? They're once you use a miniature,
I mean,
it's not
here's the
just in your
thing.
head. You've got to. I mean,
We started with pencils and paper, and honestly, the battles were usually little. I would put a letter denoting my character's name on the graph paper, right? Since then, I have battle mats. We generally have miniatures. Sometimes we 3D print the miniatures so that we can customize them and make them look more like our character. We paint those minis up.
well, that's what
I've
I'm
been
getting at.
getting
Like,
into building my own set pieces, like terrain, dungeon tiles. Like
I mean,
there are plenty of things that enhance the experience.
there's a guy, there's a guy I follow on Twitter who's making 3D print files to sell. And he sells them on Etsy for use with tabletop gaming.
Yeah.
I think it was Astronite.
Astronaut.
Whatever. Yeah. So I mean, what I'm saying is that there's so many people. In fact, that's actually I think nowadays that's the standard way people do it. And there's not as many people just doing the pen and paper anymore. You're getting people who do D&D get serious. They get the
No,
setup. They get the systems. They buy these, or really they usually make them themselves. They build it out themselves to customize their experience. And that's not, I mean, what they're talking about here, you could, if I'm reading this, the way they're talking about that, they could even, I mean, under their reading right here, if you do anything beyond just sitting at a table with a pen and paper, you're kind of it's going beyond your imagination at that point, because once you have a miniature of any kind, it's not just your imagination anymore. You've made something. So,
dude, there are a lot of people who like they build their own gaming tables and they horizontally mount a monitor on the table so that you can actually pull up a graph and display a map to put your characters on. Like there are so many times when you enhance the whole play thing. Like Even one of my old campaigns that I ran many years ago, they fought fire elementals. So I used tea candles. I put little tea candles on the graph, or on the battle mat, and they had to fight the tea candles. And every time they defeated one of the fire elementals, I snuffed that candle.
Well, that just sounds like a really fun, inventive element.
Yeah, it's a cool little thing. And guess what? I wasn't replacing my imagination. I was using my imagination, but like replacing it with an animation of the magic missile streaking across the board, no, that's normal. That's an animation. That's not like suddenly you've added gameplay mechanics to this thing. That's dumb.
It's retarded. It's like, what is it? Simple Jack from Tropic Thunder. It's Simple Jack.
Yeah. May I make my VTT Owlbear token look like the one from the Monster Manual? No, we've never licensed visual depictions of our content under the OGL, just the text of the SRD. That hasn't changed. You can create a creature called an Owlbear with the stat block from the SRD. You cannot copy any of our Owlbear depictions, but if you've drawn your own unique Owlbear or someone else did, you can use it. All right, well, that's just stingy, assholes. Like, fuck.
That's actually stupid too. The smart thing that they should do, because look, the money that Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast makes is in selling the systems and the licensing. They should make available for basically every, whatever the virtual tabletop system is, they should have universal JPEG, like whatever the format would be, versions of their monsters or character, like make it available. Go the other direction, because your stuff is so easy to do their own. Like he just said in this draft, well, if you make your own, it's fine. Well, people are going to make their own, and they're going to make their own that's not Dungeons and Dragons and go to a different system. If you make, the easier you make it for people to be into your system, the more they'll be in there. I mean, this is what's interesting, is that if you're coming from a video game system, what do? You do free to play, and you get people with the microtransactions because you got them sucked into the game.
Well, I think the big thing here is D&D, or one D&D, I think it's called, like, that's their VTT. They're trying to make their own VTT and take over the market with it. So they want to hurt all the other VTTs out there in any way they can to try and dominate the market. And it's like, why didn't you guys just partner up with one of the existing VTTs that was doing well? Or would that cost too much money?
Or just just open source your product to the VTTs at a minimum cost. So because then guess what? Because then the virtual tabletop people will make yours better. All right. So you've heard of Microsoft, right? I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
Microsoft?
So Microsoft is a really good example of this for two reasons. Microsoft made an operating system for IBM and IBM cloned PCs. And they did it by making it free or effectively free. They went to IBM and said, you can have Windows, which was the name of their operating system, and everybody's heard of it now. And they said you can have it, or it was dirt cheap. Instead of like exorbitant money, they said basically $1 a computer, something ridiculously low. And IBM also made their computers. They allowed other manufacturers to clone their technology and make PCs themselves. So Windows became the operating system for all of those PCs at a low rate. And because it became the thing people were used to using, later on, people didn't want to change, so they just kept using every new iteration of it. Now, once Windows got a little greedy and started charging for everything, wouldn't you know, that's when Apple started making inroads back with market share. Now, there was other things involved, like product design, getting girls to like it because it had colors and stuff like that. But one of the things that made it more competitive was actually when they started raising the price, when Windows started releasing new operating systems very frequently. every couple of years and charging $300, $400, $500 for the operating system. Then people are like, oh, why am I, if I'm paying all that, I might as well get an Apple. They don't charge me for the operating system.
Yeah.
So the lesson I'm trying to get at is, if you're Wizard of the Coast with Dungeons and Dragons and you make it so difficult and you start doing all this, you're just going to let people who are more open source crush you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, people remember VHS and not beta. Which one was open source and which one wasn't? People have, PCs are the dominant computer even today, and that's because they were open source and Mac wasn't.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lesson, right? When you're trying to capture market share, you go big. Like Android, people think, I get it. Apple is great. Like they have a lot of phones that they sell. Android is by far the dominant market share wise.
Yep.
Because there's so many different companies making Android phones.
Well, because they can. What
Exactly.
about OGL 1.0 alpha? Does this policy apply to that? Yes, you can upload your already licensed content to a VTT. I own or operate a VTT. How does this affect me? If you are a VTT owner or operator who supports OGL products on your platform, you have the same obligations for VTT content that any other website owner or operator has for copyrighted content under the DMCA. You say this is a conversation. Does that mean this policy can change? Yes, we need your feedback as the tabletop space evolves. The potential of VTTs is tremendous and exciting, and we don't want to harm their development. Bullshit. I call bullshit.
What they should say is, we don't want you to develop any that aren't making us money. Like, all your VTTs belong to us.
Yep. And we will be expecting our kickbacks.
Yep. It is.
That is the end of that.
Yeah. Oh, and to correct me if I'm wrong, and what I've seen some reports are that a lot of the other tabletop companies are trying to make a universal license for their content, basically to stick it to Dungeons and Dragons and Wizard of the Coast.
Paizo came out with the Open RPG Creatives license, which is the Orc license. And that one is very much, it is much more akin to the OGL 1.0 alpha. And I believe it is already written into it that it will exist in perpetuity and cannot be revoked.
Nice. That's where Wizards of the Coast ought to be really. What they're doing is giving all these other people an opportunity to basically make a universal open source standard that will make their products what people want to play. Because by having that kind of content, like allowable, people who do virtual tabletop and stream it on YouTube, guess what they're going to use? And once people are streaming it on YouTube or Twitch or any other game streaming platform, and you see people playing it, you're going to go, oh, that looks like fun. I'll go get Pathfinder. I'll go get this. I'll go get that. And guess what? They're not going to be going out and go. The reasons, let's be honest, the reasons Dungeons and Dragons had a resurgence in the last 10 years is Stranger Things. Stranger Things got it back into the cultural conversation, and it blew up from there. And it's
Stranger Things and Critical Role has contributed quite a lot to that as well.
Yeah, and people playing it on streaming services and making content playing the games. If you take that stuff away, it reminds me of like video game makers not wanting people to stream their video games, and it's like, you're an idiot. Like, that doesn't hurt you. Like, I know Nintendo gets a little antsy sometimes, and some of the others, about streaming their games. No one cares that you might be spoiling like, people streaming your game gets people to buy your game and makes you more money because it makes the game more popular. Once it becomes a cultural thing that people want to be a part of, they start buying it. Like, I'll give Ghost of Tsushima. The game came out right around the same time as Last of Us 2. Everyone started talking about how Last of Us 2 had a terrible story and it wasn't great. And so the game didn't sell as well as it was supposed to. Ghost of Tsushima was the opposite. Like, it kind of came in under the radar and people started talking about it and playing it and streaming it. And once you saw it, you just wanted to go out and buy it, even though you already kind of knew what the game's story was going to be. In 2022, 2023 now, the way you get your stuff out there is to make it available for people to make content online with streaming, and then people will go and buy your stuff if you make it easy for them to do it. If you start putting up all these barriers, then people, that's how piracy happens. That's how people don't use your game. Let them be your free advertising instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of years to advertise and market and do all this stuff. Let you streamers do it for free for you. You don't even have to pay them because the streaming platform they're on, if they're monetized, pays them. Their patrons, if they're on Patreon or Subscribe Star or whatever system, pays them. You don't even pay them a dime, and they advertise your product. What kind of simple jack do you have to be to not understand that's a great way for you to do business?
No, you don't like that they're making money and you want your piece of the pie. Like, it's kind of like extortion when you think about it.
I'm reminded of Godfather 2 when they have, they flash back and they show the guy walking around like, Little Italy. And he's like, I'm just trying to wet my beak. I just need 10% of what you make every week. That's all I'm asking. It's just for my part. And what do? Nothing. I'm just here. I give you protection.
Yep.
It's in this case, it's Hasbro. It's like, what are you doing for you? Nothing. We give you protection from us suing you. And you give us your money. Just a little bit. Not all of it, just a little bit.
All right. Well, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover on OGL 1.2, but I did come across something interesting while I was doing my research that I wouldn't mind highlighting.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Gonna share again because I thought this was kind of funny.
Let's see. D&D's Drizzt books, what are they trying to do? We're built on racist tropes. R.A. Salvatore wants to change that? Wait a second. Does he actually want to change that?
It sounds more like he was come to by Wizards of the Coast to change that, and he's on board with it. But, I mean, he might just be saying whatever he needs to say to make the money, because I'm sure he's getting paid.
I get the feeling that we'll take your character out of print and you won't get any more royalties unless you fix it.
Yeah, because we've decided what's hateful.
What's crazy is
if
Drizzt
the
is the
Drow are
only
being
character
portrayed as evil, that's a trope that has to go away.
They're dark elves, right?
Yeah, they serve like the chaotic evil Drow goddess by the name of Lolth, who basically has raised them all to be agents of chaos that kill each other. Whatever.
It's some bullshit. Bullshit.
Despite their popularity among fans of the genre fiction, Dungeons and Dragons: The Legend of Drizzt novels have been fairly criticized for reinforcing racist fantasy tropes. R.A. Salvatore, creator of Drizzt, maybe Salvatore, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, tells Polygon that the time has come to set things right. The next novel, Starlight Enclave, arrives on August 3rd and will expand the franchise into new territories. But yeah, broaden race of dark-skinned elves. No, not dark-skinned, ebony-skinned, jet black skin. Like these aren't African elves. Their skin is literally black. And then you get down into some of the more. These were the paragraphs right here. These two were the ones that just made me laugh. The Legend of Dritz began in 1988 with The Crystal Shard, Salvatore's first published novel. It tells the story of a drow named Dritz Do'Urden and his adventures among the inhabitants of Icewind Dale, a northern region in D&D's Forgotten Realms setting. While the humans, dwarves, and other fantasy creatures that inhabit the Dale present as vaguely Nordic or Viking, Dritz has black skin. That feature, which marks him as a member of an inherently violent and untrustworthy race of elves, casts him as the other and invariably sets him at odds with his neighbors. Yes, this is all true. Other than the fact that they say, black skin and don't actually explain that it's literally black. Like
I know, but
black.
I want you to flip down to the paragraph that starts with "since its inception in the 1970s," because
we'll get there. You got to read the one in between too.
I know, but I already started reading that part, and it's pissing me off.
Yeah, Salvatore says that this othering was always his intent. What he did not fully comprehend when he created the character, he said, was how Dritz's blackness would contribute to how that othering was perceived by his audience. It's supposed to be perceived that way by the audience. The whole idea is he is very different than them. They have difficulty trusting him. It's one of the morals ingrained in the story because they all grow to trust him with their lives implicitly by the end because of his actions. Like,
wouldn't that be an actual very good message to kind of
yes,
combat racist thinking?
So I don't know why they're saying it's a problematic narrative device. Why? Because he wasn't super awesome from the get-go and they didn't all fall down and go, "You're dark. You must be better than us." No, like there was nothing wrong with the story. Since its inceptions in the 1970s, the game has codified racism in the form of strict inequalities between its fantasy races within its rule set. Like I said, these are the people that are in control of your tabletop games right now. They don't want the orcs ravaging the countryside. They don't want the drow to be drow. It's so fucking dumb. It's just so fucking dumb.
It's ridiculous.
D&D, like Tolkien, makes race literally real in-game by applying immutable modifiers to characters' ability scores, skills, and other characteristics.
Yeah, but that's the point, though. If you've got and this is why anime is winning. And guess what? In anime, when you've got orcs or dragons or whatever, they get class benefits. I guess you could say race benefits. There's skill sets that come along with being that. There's a show that's very popular called That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, and one of the things it does is gives him class abilities that come from being a slime that wouldn't be there if he wasn't a slime.
Dude, I hate it even more than that because applying immutable modifiers to character ability scores, skills, and other characteristics based on race. Okay. Have you ever heard any African Americans make jokes about how they dominate all sports? I have. I've seen it on Saturday Night Live, I believe. Several times, in fact. Have you ever heard any of your Asian friends say, "I'm not a math Asian," implying that there are lots of people who are math Asians? As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Harvard doesn't accept Asians anymore because they're too good at math. Yes, it is not. It is, as much as people want to believe it, our cultural upbringing and several other factors contribute to who we end up being when we first enter into adulthood. And saying that we're all blank slates from the start isn't really true. It's just not. Some people have thyroid issues and they are more likely to gain a lot of weight and they have to manage that weight much more closely. Other people do not. Some people, like myself, have a lot of, heart problems in their family history. So they have to be real careful about their blood pressure and things like that. We do have immutable modifiers. oftentimes those do come from our lineage, our race, our ancestry, etc. If I say sickle cell anemia, you can probably think of, the group that is statistically most likely to have that. Like, to act as though that isn't a thing is just, it's asinine. It's looking at the world through the eyes of a 4-year-old who has not yet come to understand that people are different. In their own way. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. I saw this and I had to laugh at it, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, what was the problem here? And there isn't one. You got to have bad guys in a story, right?
Well, yeah, that's what you gotta have.
And like, that is not to imply that all the drow are, evil as sin, but specifically the city of Menzoberranzan, where Drizzt hails from, it was a matriarchal society where like the families were run by the matriarch of each house, the matron mother, so to speak. And men were basically all slaves. And there was a lot of backstabbing, a lot of families feuding with each other, killing each other, etc. And they all served and worshipped Lolth, a chaotic, evil spider god, who said unto her children, like, yeah, I mean, it's only bad to kill someone if you get caught. Like, it's like one of their primary tenets. There's a whole part in the first book where like they talk about how most drow die of natural causes because a knife to the back quite naturally kills you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it.
But like, so yeah, they were a predominantly evil group. Now there were certain characters even in that society who bucked the trend, Drizzt being the first and foremost among them. But like, Jarlaxle isn't really evil either, and he's a very critical character. But like, saying that it's a trope that has to end here at the beginning of this article, if the drow are being portrayed as evil, that's a trope that has to go away. Why?
Why is that
a trope that has to go away?
Can you just say out loud the name of the place where this was published on the internet? It's in the upper left-hand corner. There you go. That explains it. It was Polygon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, but like...
And this was published, so this was from back in August of 2021. So that was back when they didn't have to make money to do stuff, so...
Yeah, and that's my point. Like I said, this is a while back, but it just like these are the stories that are coming out of the lore now. I don't like it. I don't like it. And I'm actually thinking about going and reading the story. I'll let you know. I've seen kind of a split right down the middle. Overall, a lot of people are saying they enjoy it. But the people who have read Salvatore's older stuff, they're like, this is not as good. As a matter of fact, it's doesn't feel like he even wrote it. So I am sure he was consulted very heavily on what needed to happen in the story. So
is this something?
This is the company. This is the company that is destroying your lore, taking away your rights to the Creative Commons, getting rid of OGL 1.0, like printing magic into completely destroying the value, like just completely destroying the value of Magic the Gathering cards, like that, and that's kind of my whole point. OGL 1.0 and the OGL 1.1 and now the OGL 1.2 like has turned the entire community against Wizards of the Coast, and now everybody is seeing them for what they are. But I've been sitting here thinking to myself, they have been this for a long, long time now. Like, I'm glad everybody else has finally noticed, but Wizards of the Coast is the EA of tabletop games.
Oh yeah, yeah, and were they? I think they. Luckily, they're not on a buying spree anymore. So I don't know if it can. If there's any of these other companies are hopefully smarter now about selling out, they'd have to write fat checks. But I don't know that Hasbro's in a position where they're going to be buying anyone else to try to consolidate. I mean, they'd have to do a lot to try to. And that's the thing is, tabletop gaming is so open source, you can't ever really lock that down. You're not going to be able to keep other people from coming into the space.
Yeah,
So
no, definitely not.
yeah, so what the
I
Dungeons
mean,
and
most
Dragons?
people who play Dungeons and Dragons, we all started off at like 8, 9 years old. And like when we started, we weren't using dice, we weren't using paper, we weren't using anything. One person was telling the story and asking the other people what they did.
Yep.
And then it slowly built up from there until you actually finally got into one of the different games and started incorporating the mechanics and building it up and making it more of a thing you could actually play, where there were actual stakes and actual rules. But you know that's about all I have to say about that. I think we have
All
covered it.
right, all right, Forrest. It's like
That's all I
that's
got to
all I
say
have to
about
say
that.
about that. Powerful man, powerful.
But I don't
Uh,
want to. I don't want to get into that point where I'm looping around and driving home the same points. So I think I've covered most of what I wanted to say about Wizards of the Coast and the OGLs.
I think I mean it was very thorough. We did about 90 minutes
Yeah.
on that. I think that's a very good, solid deep dive for people who wanted to get a real understanding of what was going on. We actually read through the newest iteration of the OGL from Wizards of the Coast. So I think hopefully people watching our show will be in a very informed state to be able to give the middle finger to Wizards of the Coast. That would be what I'd say is that after all the things we went over, it's pretty clear that the way to go is not with Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro.
Yeah, and I would even say if you're just a player, just from the player side, like I still wouldn't go with it because as I said, the quality and quantity of the supplementary content in each edition has gotten less and less and less. In 3.5, there were mountains of supplementary books. There were Ultimate Magic Items 2, Ultimate Feats. There were expansions on different character classes, uh, different books on like the Complete Divine, all sorts of books. And then you get to fifth edition, and I think so far there's been like maybe 8 or so books, maybe 8 to 10, 8 to 12 books that have dropped to go along with the core rule books, and that's about it. Like that's it. That's it. Because I'm not joking when I say that there were dozens upon dozens, probably close to 100 supplementary books for 3.5. And honestly, like, okay, you've got this OGL, which you keep saying is to protect the community, but in actuality, it's to try and get money from the community, monetize the community, or force the community out any way you can, and make yourselves the only game in town. If you want to monetize Dungeons and Dragons, um, make more content instead of trying to stop everybody else making theirs or get your piece of their content. Like, make more content. Reward these creators who are making shit by bringing them in. You know, partner up with them. Um, offer to buy from them the rights to distribute. Like there are plenty of ways you could be rewarding the content creators instead of trying to stop them so you're the only game in town and then leaving yourself with a hollowed out edition that has barely any content to play with in the first place.
That would be the smart play. Yeah, I mean, you basically let these people create content for you. So do like make it fairly easy. It's, I mean, but I don't think they're smart. I think they're chasing monetization and what they perceive as the under monetization of the player base, which is one of the most infuriating things you can hear people say is that basically I'm not being milked for enough money, so they need to milk me for more, and they're going to redesign their entire system to try to do that.
Dude, most of your player base can't even afford eggs right now, and you're trying to get them to give up more money from their wallets. There
Oh
isn't
Jesus,
expendable money anymore.
do I look like Elon Musk? I can't buy a dozen eggs.
Oh shit, right?
But we do. I think we can probably move on to the one thing we try to be consistent in covering every week on our show,
Yeah.
and that's streaming ratings. And let's see where we're at.
What do we have today?
So we were now up to December 12th through 18th because they're several weeks behind in Nielsen. So as we're getting closer to Christmas, Wednesday and Harry and Meghan were still crushing it at the top. Coco Melon, which is, we're getting to the holidays, so kids in front of the TV to be babysat is obviously always going to do good business. We talk about this one all the time.
Mm-hmm.
NCIS is still just
never going anywhere.
This is on the overall number, so this is beating new shows. Like this White Lotus show was supposed to be a hit, and NCIS is beating it. So, The Recruit is another new show from Netflix. I mean, it's Netflix, 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 one HBO Max show, Netflix, another HBO Max show, which is Friends, which is another one of those evergreen shows. Hulu with Criminal Minds, which is another older show, and then another new Netflix show, Firefly Line.
Speaking of Netflix, I watched that 90s show with the wife the other day.
How was that?
How
did they address Hyde not being there? Did they kill him off? Like
they never addressed Hyde not being there. They just kind of went with their thing.
How did they? But that's so lame. He was like a core character, one of their best friends forever.
I don't know what they did with that one, but they never addressed Hyde not being there. I would say the show was okay. The original That 70s Show cast was really what carried it. But then they've got like the 90s kids now, right? And I told my wife this, but I felt that the 90s kids were clearly written by 2000s kids based on what they thought 90s kids were.
Considering we were both 90s kids, we can know exactly what 90s kids were talking and acting like because that was us.
Yeah, so. I mean, they had them dressed right for the most part. The one girl who was very much punk, she looked a little more punk than I remember punks looking at that time, especially punks who were still going to, middle and high school.
But in the 90s, punk kids weren't like, they were like Green
They
Day
were in
punk.
college.
Yeah, they weren't like.
And the fact that like two of the main characters were wearing nose rings in the first episode.
No, that's stupid.
Nose rings
that's
weren't a thing back in the 90s.
Not accurate. Now, what was a thing was that little like the 90s was when the girls started doing all the like cartilage piercings on their ears, like
they'd go all the way up around the ear, and some of the guys in the late 90s started doing the eyebrow piercing.
Yeah. So if they wanted to be accurate to like a little bit of a rebellious girl, she would have had a whole bunch of those piercings going up her ear. She probably would. I mean, go back and watch My So-Called Life. Jesus Christ, it's not that hard. I mean, that show will give you your versions of teenage girls right there. You got Claire Danes one. You got the crazy girl. You got the. I mean, that show did gift us Morbius himself though with Jordan Catalano. So if that's it's funny. Like if you talk to girls in that age group and you ask them about what's his name? what is his actual name? It was the actor Jared Leto. Like
Jared Leto.
Jared, they'll go Jared Leto. You mean Jordan? If you go Jordan Catalano, they'll know Jared Leto. What? That was one of those girl crush actors. Those he was on like Tiger Beat or whatever those magazines were at the time. And fun fact, kids, there were things called magazines that came out fairly often that had pictures that you can find now on the internet, and that's how you saw those pictures was in a glossy magazine because you didn't have a computer to just pull that up until later. When did you have AOL and like all that stuff? Around Windows 95 is when that kind of started. And
I mean, yeah, I think in sort of like I'd say like probably my sophomore or junior year, I started getting like the internet access stuff.
I really wonder if there's a service you can put onto a computer to basically throttle the connection speed back to like 28K.
You can.
I would love to sit a kid in front of a computer and like throttle it to 28K and tell them to load a web page
Well,
and
I
just
don't know that it's
watch them.
necessarily a service, but for example, like if you have like a higher end router that you put on the back end of whatever your service provider router is, um, you can generally go in and throttle other connections and be like, this connection can only have this much, and give it 28,800K. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, 28K. Like, yeah. Because remember, it was a big deal when you got your 56K modem. Like,
I
oh my
mean,
God,
I never had a
it's twice as
56K
fast.
modem. My dad felt that the internet was not that important. So we had
Well,
like
he
a
didn't.
2880.
He didn't really get. He got that one wrong just a little bit, didn't he?
Well, he didn't feel it was important for him. He didn't fucking care. Like he was in sales. He had to go on the road either way. I
That's
mean, I'm
true.
sure he has a decent modem now, I think, but like when we were teenagers, the internet was, wasn't being used for business all that much yet.
That's a good. Yeah, yeah. I guess that's it. But it's still. I just remember. Do you remember like when a picture was like loading line by line, going down the screen?
Yes, and you were like waiting and waiting, be like, we're almost at the boobs.
I mean, everybody remembers that because that was the wild west of the internet. It might have taken forever to load, but there weren't any real protections on what sites you went to. Like there was not really anything. There was no verifications or checks. Now I guess we've moved on to where a lot of that stuff's still available, but it was it was a new time. You had all sorts of pictures. I just remember downloading like when movie trailers being online was the new thing, and you would have to spend 3 hours downloading a 2 minute trailer, and it would still be at very low quality. And they would usually do QuickTime format, which if you had a PC was really annoying because who had QuickTime on your PC? You had to go and get QuickTime to be able to watch those movie clips.
Yeah, and then you'd be spending another 20 minutes downloading that.
Yeah, and that's when I remember using Internet Explorer to download Netscape Navigator because Navigator was the much better web browser.
Yeah, until it wasn't.
Yeah, it
But
just kind of
yeah, I
went
mean,
away.
I don't know. Overall, I'd say that 90s show, I'd give it like a 6.5 out of 10. Um, the old cast carries it. Uh, Red and Kitty are freaking hysterical, but the new kids, they don't feel like 90s kids to me quite that much.
I mean, has the guy who plays Red ever looked young? Because remember going all the way back to RoboCop, where he was the bad guy in RoboCop, and he looked like a middle aged old dude then.
Dude, he was like Sean Connery, man. He hit max level early.
Because what was
Once you hit
RoboCop was
max
like
level, you stop changing.
it was like 1986 was like RoboCop. It's just 896. He's basically looked the same for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
Of course, I Red was the guy who really made that 70s show funny.
Yes.
I mean,
We're not hating on Red, Matt. We're actually saying Red was the guy who carries that show.
Madge, he's probably busy trying to figure out what cords plug into his computer as we're talking about these things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure his computer isn't set up yet. He's still trying to figure that out. He must have sent that comment on his phone.
It's got cords upon cords upon cords. So
So what do we got on the rest of the ratings here? We've looked at the overall.
Yeah, so on the originals, we it's getting close to Christmas, so we've got Santa Clauses hanging in there. Wednesday, Harry Meghan. Look at this: Netflix, 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 Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu. Like, so Netflix is clearly. I mean, they just reported their quarterly earnings, and they added another like 7 million subscribers.
Oh, they were spares. Okay.
It's set up now, apparently.
There's nowhere for these cords to go. They must be spares.
You just throw them away. They're extra. They always send you extra cords for no reason.
It's like when they always leave me extra screws when I'm putting together tables and whatnot.
Like, which is good. Sonic Prime was interesting because I guess that's a new Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, maybe.
Okay.
So I'm surprised that actually hit as high as it did for being an animated show. You know what didn't hit that high was like He-Man or any of those other Netflix ones. Acquired is just a story of older shows. Coco Melon, NCIS, Friends, Criminal Minds,
the usual stuff.
Big Bang Theory, Grey's Anatomy, Gilmore Girls. I mean, so we've got at number 1.
I still find it hilarious that Grey's Anatomy hasn't ended. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like on season 19. Just keeps going.
Jeez. And movies? What are we looking at for movies?
Yeah, so let's see movies here.
I'm getting curious about movies lately.
So Black Adam, Bullet Train are the newer ones. Prisoners, it just shows you the power of Netflix. Look, a movie from 2013. If Netflix puts it on the top of that little feed scroll, people are going to watch it. And so they are. And then you've got Black Adam, which is, I think, a lot of people trying to see if it was as bad or as good, but now it's free on HBO Max. We've talked about it before. Bullet Train was good.
Loved Bullet Train.
And then we're running into the Christmas season, right? We've got Home Alone, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, I Believe in Santa, Elf, Home Alone 2. I mean, mixed in with Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and Stork. So we've got another 2 kids-oriented movies.
Yeah.
What this tells me is that around December, there's a lot of people putting their kids in front of the screen. So those things are jumping. All right, let's see. You always follow me. I know you're here. You always follow me. I wonder who we're talking about. Are we talking about our YouTuber, Slender Dad?
I'm so confused.
I don't know. But it's all right. He's typing on his new computer, so maybe it's just
Elf is greater than Home Alone, huh? I don't disagree with that.
No.
Oh, yeah, I hear background responses to Elf being greater than Home Alone. That was a no. I do like Home Alone. I think Home Alone and Elf are both the story of really bad parents. Because, I mean, Home Alone is really well written, but the mom and the dad, it's not a good look for that family, because even though there's a very tightly scripted series of events that leads to Kevin not being on that plane, it's still a bad look as parents.
I mean, they needed a setup. It was a good setup as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. I laughed my ass off. And without Home Alone, I wouldn't laugh my ass off when I went and saw Violent Night, and they had jokes oriented around Home Alone. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. And I think Home Alone 2 is also very funny. So
yeah,
the
I
concept,
agree.
Lost in New York there. I mean, Tim Curry coming in as the hotel concierge made it really good. especially with the jokes about him kissing on the guard when he plays the clip from the movie, which they probably wouldn't be able to make that joke now in 2023 because it
Well,
wouldn't
you
be
can't make
allowed.
jokes in 2023.
No, no. So the ratings are, but what you can see, it looks like it's down though. You remember when we were looking earlier and we saw the like view minutes, like aside from Wednesday and Harry and Meghan, everything is lower than it was just a couple months ago. I feel like it's kind of a lull in streaming numbers. Because you remember, like, when we were looking and House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings were kind of like 5 and 6, and they were pulling like almost 1,000 at 5 and 6, and then
Yeah,
the other things were higher.
I keep waiting to see Willow and what's the other one? Oh, Blood Origins up here, and I'm not seeing them.
Elf is not the greatest Christmas movie, dude. Get over it. Our chat is actually heating up, getting a debate.
Well, our chat is heating up because Mad and Dr. Anonymous colleagues showed up. And they're having their own little argument in there.
That's funny. Our chat is a good place for that. Nothing wrong with that.
But I mean, I feel like we can wrap up the show now.
Do we? Let's see. We've got lies. Yeah, but we all know you think it's the best one, brah.
Brah.
Brah. Hey, brah.
Brah. We know you think it's the best one, brah.
All right, take that off the stream. Anything else to finish up? All right, so in summary, do not do any business with Wizards of the Coast. Go ahead and move off of D&D. So
Yeah. Don't work with Wizards of the Coast. Go to Pathfinder. Pathfinder is the way of the future.
I'm mad. I'm going back to finish the movie. Enough with the hate. Oh, well, we don't like to be hateful here. We like to talk about good stuff. So there you go.
Listen, even if we were being hateful, we wouldn't know because Wizards of the Coast decides what's hateful, not us.
And they can suspend your right to do anything once they decide what's hateful. So that was one of the things we covered with the OGL. They will kick you off once they decide, and you don't get a right to question what they decide on that. That's the kind of contract that Steven Crowder would record a phone call about, I think.
No. I was trying to stay away from it. I don't like when mommy and daddy are fighting.
Yeah, if Wizards of the Coast sent that contract to Steven Crowder, he would immediately have rejected it and made a phone call about it. Oh, should we even talk about that? I don't know. It kind of feels like a third rail.
I have my opinion on it. I like both Steven Crowder and I like the Daily Wire. I think it is very much a question of a tactical approach versus a strategic approach. But recording someone in secret who, you have a very good friend style relationship with, and then putting it out like that, it's not a good look. So I don't care what the reasoning behind it was. Not a good look.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of sympathetic to the fact that if you feel like you're kind of getting dicked over in negotiations, there's that like base part of you that thinks, "Oh, this is a good idea. This is a good idea." Sometimes you need another voice to say, "Maybe this isn't a good idea." Like you've made your point. So he made an initial video where he showed the contract and he didn't say who it was. The next day the Daily Wire people came out and said, no, it was us, and here's why. Where I think the Daily Wire people are turning others off is where they just made it immediately like he was offered $50 million and he turned it down. So clearly, he could have made a lot of money. And that, I think, highlights the point Crowder was making in his, where it was like these people are just in bed with the money entities and they're not really thinking about the longer term speech aspects. But when he released the phone call, I don't think it helped him. I don't know. It makes it look everybody bad. And also, what I will say is, Candace Owens going on the Timcast thing and just like throwing giant friggin' like landmine sized grenade, whatever you want to call it, like just flame throwing, I don't think helped the situation either. Because people who are inclined to be tribal and have tribalistic responses are going to hear that like really incendiary stuff where she was like, he's just a bitch, he's this that. It's going to push people away, and that's not what we need if you're really not trying to do all that stuff.
Well, there are a couple things I don't like about everything that's happened. One being, I mean, when you put that contract out there like that and made it public, I get that you were calling out the people who were, whatever, enforcing big tech or whatever. But at the same time, you've also given them the blueprint. Like, you've shown them the blueprints. They now know how to destroy the Death Star. Like, you don't show your enemy your defenses, And meanwhile, I mean, you've got these two just slinging mud back and forth at each other, and who's really suffering? Your fucking audiences, dudes. Like, stop it. Stop it. I mean, Crowder's so busy shitting on Daily Wire right now. I'm not getting any of my shows. So,
Well, he's going to be on Timcast on Monday, apparently.
Yeah, great.
And...
I mean, great. But yeah, I mean, okay, great. You're standing up for content creators. Dude, I don't need you to stand up for me. I really don't. I know how to read a fucking contract. If I take a bad deal, that's on me. It's not on you for not standing up for me. It's on me. And at the end of the day, what I want from you is the content that I want to see. Just like what I want from Daily Wire is the content that I want to see. When I thought that maybe Daily Wire would end up picking up Crowder, I thought that'd be great because I don't have access to Daily Wire's paywall. But if Crowder goes over there, I can get everything I want behind one paywall. Guess that's not happening anytime soon.
Nope. I mean, I guess what I don't think was as big an own as they say is that Crowder registered that domain at the beginning of December. Clearly, the negotiations were going on several months back, and they broke down and went south. So, whatever.
No, I don't know, but like that phone call happened like a week or two ago. It's kind of messed up.
Yeah, that's what what's her name? Candace Owens said.
Yeah, well, that's what Candace Owens said, but there were also some tweets. Ben Shapiro was none too happy, and another person weighed in that I thought had a very good point. If you would like, I will share my screen on that one.
Yeah, do it.
But and again, I really don't want to take sides on this, but this is somebody who I respect greatly and who is in fact a lawyer.
All right, let's share. Adding to the stream.
But as Viva Frey said, I like S. Crowder, but this is getting worse and worse for him. Who's going to now negotiate with him knowing that he will disclose the contract, defame you if he thinks he's being exploited, secretly record conversations that he'll release afterwards, win the battle, lose the war? And yeah, I kind of feel like he's got a point there. Like, I don't think it matters too much because I think at this point Crowder was planning on, doing his own thing anyway. But dude, why you got to burn bridges? Like I'll tell you, you're never going to see anyone from the Daily Wire as a guest on anything that Crowder does ever again, and vice versa.
No, I think given the people who associated with Daily Wire's tweets over the course of the last 24 hours, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Crowder and people associated with him are not going to be doing that. I do the one thing, because I think he comes out looking pretty bad with the recording part. He was actually in a pretty strong position till that part, like because he had a good, strong moral argument, and I think even when Daily Wire and Jeremy Boring came out and did his video where he went like for an hour going through the contract terms,
Mm-hmm.
Crowder didn't actually need to release the tape to have a good counter argument to that, which is, look, it was, I didn't mention money, and it wasn't, I make plenty of money. It's about like the fact that, because here's how you attack that. If you want to do that, if you wanted to address that head on without leaking a private conversation that the person didn't know was being recorded.
A private conversation that it seems like you instigated for the sole purpose of recording it.
Exactly. So where you're basically setting them up to do it. What I would say is the best way to attack that is the fact that the Daily Wire itself has been subject to ad boycotts. The Daily Wire money people, Jeremy Boring and the others, started a whole friggin' razor company because Harry's Razors got blackmailed into pulling their ads from Daily Wire content.
Yeah.
These are people who have experienced a false campaign that had advertisers pull out from their companies directly, so directly that they actually started an alternative company where they advertised that they respect customers and they're not going to do that stuff and you should buy from us because of that.
Yeah.
If you're going to, I think you had a pretty strong moral argument to say, how can the Daily Wire and the people who run it do that kind of thing and then turn around and put in their contracts that they're going to reduce and basically eliminate your pay if you get demonetized or deplatformed from the big tech companies that are the ones that already tried to do that to the Daily Wire themselves. I think you retain your moral high ground if you do it that way. Now, whether it's still a good idea to start that fight and to have it, I don't. I mean, I think Crowder was going to do his own thing anyway. I do think there's a pretty strong element to basically doing this fight to try to promote his webpage to get email addresses to be able to build his email list. Because I do remember it came out that the Blaze, or I think it was the Blaze, previously CRT TV, and the Blaze bought them, owned the Mug Club email list. So Crowder didn't even have that. So he was trying to rebuild it as he became a free agent, which I think is the part that is interesting, because knowing those little details, it does make it a little more obvious that maybe he's trying to promote his own brand with these actions more than actually helping other people.
Yeah.
And leaking and I think making that phone call within the last couple weeks for the express purpose of recording it to make the guy look bad because you knew it was coming supports that one. Whereas if he didn't do that and he was just arguing, he would have a better shot at it. At least retaining the moral high ground.
And I mean, like I said, it's a tactical approach versus a strategic approach. Like, I don't necessarily think that either business model is wrong. Sometimes you have to be inside the machine if you really want to take it down. Like, I don't necessarily see either approach being wrong, but I don't like the recording of the conversation, and I don't feel it's very genuine when he says, "Don't make me show the receipts," and then they respond by going through the contract, and then he comes back with the "I didn't want to do this" video, and I'm like, part of me thinks you did.
I kind of
You
feel
certainly
like
went to a lot of work to make sure that you had this ready to do it in the first place.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But yeah, I hate it when mommy and daddy are fighting.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's. I feel I don't. I hate being a fence sitter. I generally like to have a definitive position staked out
I
because I
do have
think
a definitive position staked out. I don't think Daily Wire has really done anything wrong in this situation. If Steven Crowder didn't like the contract, he could have just walked away from the contract. Recording a friend who was having a conversation with you in confidence and did not realize that he was being recorded um, is pretty shisty. And putting all this out into the public square to make a point that you don't like the current contracts, okay. And then saying in your video, oh, I've got the business model. I've got the business model. Okay, dude, what the fuck is it? What is the business model? And this is from somebody who is a Crowder fan. I do have I'm a Mug Club member. I've watched for years, but like, okay, what's your fucking model? What's your business model? What's your plan? What's so perfect? Like, I I personally the contract didn't seem terrible to me. It seemed like someone like Crowder is probably worth a lot more than that initial contract was offering. But like, yeah, I mean, if you lose your access to YouTube and YouTube is no longer a source of revenue, you're bringing in less revenue, so you and the company theoretically would make less money. I get it. If you didn't like that, negotiate your contract.
yeah. So that's the one thing I'll say is the term, like those are initial terms. Now I don't know how far along. Jeremy Boring didn't really. He basically indicated that it ended pretty quick after the term sheet was sent out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which is different because Candace Owens was on Timcast saying that Crowder came back and wanted $100+ million, and that's when Daily Wire said no. So I find it interesting that both sides are trying to pretend, or I don't want to say pretend. One side is lying about who left the negotiations and who turned it. You always want to be the people who say no and not the people who got turned down. And that's what it seems like, even though it's very natural for negotiations to not always work out. And there's going to be a point where both parties just agree that it's not working for what each one wants. You don't have to always make it about, I was the one who said no. But it seems like both of them are trying to say that Crowder's trying to pull that he walked away on the moral high ground stance. Per Candace Owens, she's trying to insinuate that Crowder wanted all this money, and when Daily Wire said you're not worth that, they were the one that walked away, and then Crowder threw a BF, a bitch fit about
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I don't know. I know I'll be watching Timcast on Monday because
I just want to know what those streaming numbers are going to be. Like, I'm intrigued to see
this is
what the.
that moment where the little dude runs into the room and goes, Morpheus is fighting Neo. Everybody's gonna run to see what's going on.
What I think it's more like in Christmas Vacation when he gets the Christmas lights going and the little electricity thing is like shutting down. Like he's going to probably like break YouTube streaming numbers. I hope they've got a server set up that can handle the
We'll
content.
see.
I also worry that given the hype along this one, um, I hopefully they got worked out whoever was swatting them, because I would feel like this is a prime risk
Dude, don't
category.
even say that. Like, don't even say it. Don't give him ideas.
You think those people who are doing that kind of shit don't already think about like the prime time to do it?
I'm sure they do, but like, I don't know. Just don't put more of that out there. We should wrap up though. We're at 2 hours.
All right, that's a good point. We're gonna Because we're super professional, we have one video that we can use, and so we're gonna use that on the way out too. It's gonna say
We're gonna go out
started.
on our intro video again.
Did you have a better idea?
No, I mean, we could just end it, but yeah, sure. Go
Oh
out on
no!
our
You know what? No, no. Now I'm just gonna end it because you said that, and I'm a
good.
spite. I'm gonna be a Steven Crowder, and we go into the next after the show's done. I'm gonna record you talking, and then we'll play it next week when we do our show.
End it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.